But we have to be, as investors, I'm very much focusing on Bitcoin and Ethereum as my top holdings in the next cycle. Just because, again, I don't have clarity on a lot of these rules and regulations that inevitably are going to come. And in all fairness, I do want some regulation. I just want the right type of regulation. Yeah, so we just briefly pierced that 20,000 marker, right? So we know that that 19.5-ish was the 2017 high. There's definitely some major support here. So what let's bring up the chart right now and take a look. And basically, again, this should be technical support. I don't think it's a long-term support, but in the very least, I do expect a bump here in Bitcoin. Again, if you zoom out on the chart here, you can see very clearly this was a major, this was a cycle pivot high going back to 2017. So it would be very surprising. The way technicals work, usually these major pivot highs give a sustainable bounce for at least a month or two in a bear cycle before they break significantly lower. Now, we obviously know what's going on with Celsius, and we saw Terra Luna. So there are dominoes that are falling. It's very reminiscent to the dot-com bubble bursting, which to me tells me there's still more downside to come eventually. But in the near term, I think a move back really right in this area here to 25 and change, that would be a very reasonable target in the near term. That's that pivot low from the Terra Luna UST collapse. And then if we get a little bit through that, then you would start hitting major resistance around 28.5, 28.6 on Bitcoin. I would be somewhat surprised if we get through the second line here, considering everything that's going on. And again, we have to remember that you still have the Fed tightening. They're not going to start printing at least till the end of the year. I know that's even, hard to imagine that they go back to that, but I do think that the economy will get in a position where they probably will have to again, maybe late this year or next year. And then that's probably where you find a bottom. And one other little tidbit here is if you look at past Bitcoin cycles, it's usually about 12 months or so before the bottom is put in. So if you go to 2018, it took about 12 months. Same thing with 2013's major high. So it makes sense that somewhere November, December, we could see that low on Bitcoin. I have a calculated target out to 12,000. 12,000 would be right in that ballpark of 80 to 85% correction, which is the normal correction Bitcoin sees in a bear market. And then there's also something called a measured move here, where if you look at this big down move, right? So if you take this 69,000 high and you take it to this low, which is basically a straight shot, we have a few bounces along the way. And then you had this longer period of consolidation right in here, right? These parallel lines. If you take the high of that consolidation and stretch a measured move down, that comes out to be right at 12,000. So there's something in technical analysis where we call it a measured move, where you have a major move with an in-between kind of resting period, and then that same distance occurs again. That gives us that 12,000 target. Now, could Bitcoin go below there? Sure it could. Anything can happen, but for me, that's kind of where I will start to say, okay, we may have a major bottom in place here, and I'll certainly be starting to accumulate once we're significantly below 20,000. Yeah, we certainly are. So I'm right with you in that we definitely have not seen max pain. And the reason I can tell that, and I'm sure you can tell that as well, is that in past cycles, I know you've been around for a long time like me, when you get to max pain, people don't even want to talk about it. They just kind of throw up their hands in kind of giving in, defeat, right? And you still see, when we at this 20,000 level, people are still like, oh, I'm going to buy more. It's going to go back to all-time highs in no time at all. That mentality shows you a lot. And that tells you you're not at that bottom yet. So again, is it going to be 12,000? Is it going to be lower than that? The only kind of caveat, and again, I've been kind of riding this, 20 was my high end, 12 is my low end. But one of the things that makes me a little nervous is that if this is the dot-com moment for cryptocurrency, then I go to Amazon's chart in 2000, right? And what's interesting about that is it's the exact same pattern on Amazon. You have the same M-top that you have on Bitcoin at this point. And Amazon went from $112 down to about $7 to $6. It's about a 95% drop, right? So you have to think in those terms. A good trader is always going to think about all angles and try to be as prepared as possible no matter what occurs. So I'm in agreement with you. I think that you will see inflation start to come in. We've already seen oil coming in sharply. That will eventually filter out. Also, natural gas has been tumbling as well. But I don't think Bitcoin is near that max pain. not yet. Yeah, so longer term, I'm hugely bullish on Bitcoin. I continue to be. I'm less bullish on a lot of the altcoins for reasons that you've mentioned here, which is, again, what use case do they have? Is it a use case that makes them a security, or is it a commodity, or what? And we know that regulation is at some point going to differentiate. And then what does that mean for them? I think Ethereum survives. There's so much built on Ethereum at this point, but we have to be, as investors, I'm very much focusing on Bitcoin and Ethereum as my top holdings in the next cycle, just because, again, I don't have clarity on a lot of these rules and regulations that inevitably are going to come. And in all fairness, I do want some regulation. I just want the right type of regulation. I want the regulation that protects the consumer, right? The ones where if your account gets hacked and you lose your Bitcoin, it's insured like an FDIC insurance, which isn't there now. So yeah, I'm in the camp that the next leg up is going to be the mega leg up. It's going to take us to at least 100,000, maybe even 250 or higher. And again, all these things are going to start to culminate. The fact that the Federal Reserve can't put the genie back in the bottle with inflation. Yes, it's going to come down. I think it gets sticky around 4 to 5%, and it stays there. And as soon as you see unemployment start to go up dramatically due to a recession, which we know we're going to have at some point, and we could even be heading that way. At some point, they're going to look at inflation and think, all right, 4 to 5%, it's not great, but we'll tolerate it because we have 10% unemployment. Let's start printing money again, right? And then it's that whole big thing again. And that's where I think that Bitcoin next mega cycle gets started. Yeah, I do. And I think that's going to be part of it. And it's part of my thesis for why I don't believe that you're at a point yet where Bitcoin has bottomed out, because we know that it follows the NASDAQ, right? So we know that it's at this stage of its lifespan, it's kind of what we would refer to as a risk on asset, and that's how it does better. So just the mere fact that you're not at that point yet. Let me show my charts here. I got the NASDAQ chart up. But basically, if we take a look at the NASDAQ, we can clearly see that we're still in the upper range of this longer term. And I'm going to even go to the weekly chart. Check this out. This is a longer term going back to 1999, the tech bubble top, this channel. And you can see how for many, many years we were kind of hovering in this lower range here. And then we had this meteoric rise all the way to the high end. And we have pulled back, but you're not even close to being back to that low end just yet. And again, if you look at it in the very least, I personally anticipate that the NASDAQ 100 at least has to test the pre-COVID highs right here at around 9,600 or so. So that still leaves quite a bit of downside in the NASDAQ. And if that NASDAQ is going to go there, it's, to me, at this stage of Bitcoin's lifespan, it's unfathomable for it to not see another leg down based on the NASDAQ collapsing even more. And again, we're talking now another 15+%, maybe 20% downside in the NASDAQ from here, which puts us down north of 50% on the overall index. Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think that makes a lot of sense that tech has been improving year after year. But the question I think we have to ask is how much of that? So if you look at the chart, right, from 99 to 2000, we were here. And then here was your 2007 or 2009 lows. And then we kind of got on this slow check. Now, remember what happened in 2009. The Fed began the quantitative easing, right? It was QE1, QE2, QE2.5, and all the way up. So the question that has to be asked is, what's the real value of the overall market when there's no Fed backstopping, no Fed stimulus? And you have to think that in the very least, yes, we probably would be higher than we were back then, but I can't imagine that it's not lower than we currently are, considering you are sucking, or you seeing the Fed suck out all this liquidity from the market. So I think that's the question is, do we get a recession, and how deep of a recession it is? How much of an earnings recession do we get? All these kind of questions have to make you wonder where the fair value, the true fair value of the NASDAQ is. And then obviously that translates into moves in cryptocurrency, where the fair value is before Bitcoin matures into kind of an offsetting, kind of a safety trade.